My wife left me and our two kids for a 28-year-old personal trainer. And the wildest part is, she didn't even feel guilty about it because a group of women on the internet told her it was empowering. I'm Marcus. I'm 42. And I never thought I'd be that guy sitting alone in what used to be our bedroom, trying to figure out when exactly my marriage turned into a social media post about radical self-love. But here we are. Ashley didn't leave because she fell out of love. She left because she got convinced that being a mother and a wife meant she had lost herself. And apparently finding herself meant abandoning everything we built together over 16 years. I'm not here for sympathy, and I'm not here to trash her. I just need to get this out. Because what happened over the past 2 years has been so surreal that sometimes I wake up thinking it was all some kind of twisted dream. We had 2 kids who are now 12 and 14. We had a house in a decent neighborhood in Mesa, Arizona, stable jobs, the kind of life that doesn't make for interesting stories at dinner parties, but felt solid and real. I'm an HVAC technician for a local company, been doing it for 15 years. Ashley worked part-time as a bookkeeper for local businesses from home, and we had our routine like every other family. I thought we were fine. Maybe not fireworks every day, but fine in that comfortable way that comes with years of knowing someone. The Arizona heat keeps me busy, especially during summer when I'm pulling 60-hour weeks and getting emergency calls at all hours. Ashley used to understand that. Used to know that when your AC goes out in 115-degree weather, that's not optional work. That's life or death for some of these elderly folks. About 2 years ago, Ashley started saying she didn't know who she was anymore. At first, I figured it was just stress, or maybe she needed a hobby. So I suggested she take up painting again, like she used to do in college. She looked at me like I had just suggested she learn to juggle chainsaws and told me I didn't get it, that she wasn't talking about hobbies. She was talking about her identity. I didn't get it. She was right about that. But I tried to listen and be supportive because that's what you do when your partner is struggling. She started spending more time online, joining these women's groups on Facebook, reading articles about feminine awakening and patriarchal structures. And look, I'm all for women supporting women, but something about these groups felt different. They weren't talking about careers or equal pay or anything concrete. They were talking about how marriage itself was a trap, how motherhood was a societal construct designed to suppress female potential, how women needed to choose themselves first always. Ashley started using phrases that sounded like they came straight from a self-help book, written by someone who had never actually dealt with real-life responsibilities. She was saying she was reclaiming her narrative and refusing to be defined by roles others gave her. And every time I tried to talk to her about it, she'd say I was being dismissive of her journey. The turning point came when she joined what she called the Desert Women Rising Collective, which, as far as I could tell, was just 6 women who met twice a week at a coffee shop in downtown Tempe to talk about how oppressed they were. And I want to be clear here, I'm not mocking feminism or women's issues. I'm talking specifically about this group that seemed more like a support group for people who wanted permission to blow up their lives. One of the women in the group had recently left her husband. Another was separated, and they all seemed to feed off each other's stories about liberation and finding themselves. Like they were competing to see who could reject traditional life the hardest. Have you ever watched someone you love get pulled into something and felt completely powerless to stop it? That's what those months felt like. Ashley came home from these meetings glowing with this manic energy, talking about breakthroughs and realizations. When I asked what specifically she was realizing, she'd get vague and say she was learning that she mattered, which always confused me because I never thought she didn't matter. Our kids started noticing that mom was different. She was physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. My son Jake asked me one night why mommy seemed sad all the time, which broke my heart because Ashley wasn't sad. She was just so caught up in this idea of self-discovery that she had stopped actually seeing the people right in front of her. The woman I'd married, who used to pack extra snacks in the kids' lunches just in case their friends forgot theirs, who would stay up late helping Emma with her science projects, was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I remember coming home one evening after spending 6 hours replacing a commercial unit in 110-degree heat, my hands raw and my back aching, and finding Ashley on the couch scrolling through her phone while Jake and Emma made themselves cereal for dinner. When I asked why she hadn't started cooking, she looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before and said, "I'm not your servant, Marcus. That hit me like a punch to the gut, because I'd never thought of her as a servant. I thought of her as my partner, the mother of my children, the woman who used to bring me cold water bottles when I was working in the garage on weekends, who would laugh at my terrible jokes after long days, who made our house feel like home. But somewhere in those online groups, she'd learned to see everything we'd built as oppression instead of partnership. Every family responsibility became evidence of her subjugation, rather than simply part of being an adult with people who depend on you. Then Cole entered the picture. And honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. He was 28, worked as a personal trainer at some boutique gym in Scottsdale, had that whole fitness influencer vibe with the perfect abs and the motivational Instagram posts. Ashley mentioned him a few times as someone who understood her need for personal growth. I wasn't worried because I trusted her, and also because Cole seemed like exactly the kind of guy who would never want the responsibility of a real relationship. But I underestimated how attractive the idea of starting over can be when someone keeps telling you that your current life is holding you back. Ashley started staying out later after her group meetings, saying she was networking with other business owners. And I believed her because why wouldn't I? We had 16 years of marriage and 2 kids and a mortgage. You don't throw that away for a personal trainer with a psychology degree he never used. But she was pulling away in ways that were impossible to ignore. She stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about the kids' school. Events, stopped being present at dinner. She'd sit there scrolling through her phone while Jake talked about baseball practice, or Emma shared something about her friends. And when I finally confronted her about it, she told me, I can't keep living for everyone else. I need to live for me. I remember standing in our kitchen, my hands still dirty from fixing Mrs. Rodriguez's AC unit that afternoon, thinking that taking care of your family isn't living for everyone else. It's just called being an adult. But I didn't say that because I could see she was looking for a fight, looking for a reason to paint me as the bad guy. The changes in Ashley became more pronounced as weeks passed. She started dressing differently, buying clothes that seemed designed for someone half her age. She joined a yoga studio that cost more per month than our electric bill, talking about investing in herself. While I was trying to figure out how we'd pay for Emma's orthodontist visits, she began, criticizing everything about our life together. Our house was too suburban, too conventional. My job was beneath her intellectual level. The kids were too demanding, too needy. Even our dog, a golden retriever named Bailey, who'd been with us for 8 years, became a symbol of everything holding her back. I watched this transformation with a growing sense of dread, like watching someone you love disappear piece by piece. The woman who used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings, who would steal bites of my breakfast while reading me funny articles from her phone, was becoming a stranger who looked at me like I was an obstacle to overcome. The night she told me she was leaving, she didn't yell or cry or apologize. She just said very calmly, I'm choosing myself, Marcus. This isn't about you or the kids. This is about me finally being honest about what I need. And when I asked what our kids need, she said they'll understand eventually. They'll thank me for showing them what it means to be authentic. I stood there watching her pack a suitcase with this sick feeling in my stomach. Not angry yet, just this overwhelming confusion about how we got here. She folded her clothes with the same methodical care she used to pack the kids' lunches, as if destroying our family was just another household task to complete efficiently. She moved in with Cole 3 days later, didn't even get her own place, just went straight from our family home to his apartment complex with the fancy gym and the pool that nobody uses because it's too hot half the year. The kids asked where Mommy went, and I told them she needed some time to figure things out, which was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Jake, who was 12 at the time, asked, Is it because of us? And I had to sit both of them down and explain that sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense. But it's never the kid's fault. Never, ever. I watched Emma's face crumble as I said those words, watched her try to be brave while her world fell apart. Ashley came by the next week to see the kids, and she brought Cole with her, which felt like a slap in the face, but I kept my cool because the kids were watching. She introduced him as her friend who was helping her through a difficult time. Like I was the difficult time she needed help getting through. I watched Emma's face when she saw this stranger in our driveway, standing next to my work truck with his BMW that he probably couldn't actually afford. I saw the exact moment she understood that everything had changed, that Mom wasn't coming back, that this was the new reality, Jake just stared at Cole with the kind of quiet intensity that worried me. Cole tried to be friendly, crouching down to the kids' level and asking about school, their interests, trying to position himself as the cool new guy who understood them better than their old-fashioned dad. But kids aren't stupid. They could see right through his act, could sense the awkwardness of the situation, even if they couldn't articulate it. Ashley started posting on social media about her journey. These long captions about breaking free from societal expectations and choosing radical self-love, and her friends from the group would comment with praise about how proud they were and how she was glowing. While I was at home meal prepping for the week and helping with homework and trying to explain to two confused kids why their mother chose herself over them. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I missed. The way she stopped asking about our future together. The way she talked about her life instead of our life. The way she started viewing every family responsibility as a burden instead of just part of being a parent. But in the moment, I kept thinking this was just a phase, that she'd snap out of it once she realized what she was throwing away. I was wrong, she was just getting started, and I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first month after Ashley left was the hardest. Not because I missed her, but because I had to become two parents overnight while pretending everything was going to be okay. I took over the morning routines, the school drop-offs, the homework checks, the doctor appointments, the parent-teacher conferences, all the invisible labor that Ashley used to handle while I was at work. And I realized pretty quickly that I had no idea how much she actually did before she decided none of it mattered anymore. Emma started having nightmares about her mom forgetting her. Jake became quiet and withdrawn in a way that scared me. And I spent my evenings researching child psychologists while meal prepping lunches for the week, because there literally weren't enough hours in the day. Ashley would text occasionally, asking how the kids were doing, sending messages about how she was thinking of them, and sending them love and light. Which sounds nice until you realize that love and light doesn't help with algebra homework, or explain why mommy isn't coming to the volleyball game. She'd schedule visits and then cancel last minute because Cole had surprised her with a weekend trip to Sedona, or because the Desert Women Rising group was having a special workshop about divine feminine energy. And every time I had to tell the kids that mom couldn't make it again, I watched a little piece of their hope die. Something told me I needed to start keeping track of everything, not because I was planning legal action yet, but because some instinct said this might matter later. I kept a simple calendar marking which days she was supposed to visit and which days she actually came. I saved every text where she canceled or rescheduled. I noted every time the kids asked about her and what I told them. Just facts, no editorial, just the truth of what was happening. The pattern became depressingly predictable. Ashley would make plans with the kids, get their hopes up, then find some excuse to cancel. Her feminist collective was having an emergency meeting. Cole needed her support for some fitness competition. She was going through an emotional breakthrough and needed space to process. Always something more important than showing up for Jake's baseball games or Emma's school concerts. I remember one particularly brutal weekend when she was supposed to take the kids to the Arizona Science Center. They had been talking about it for weeks, Emma especially excited about the new dinosaur exhibit. 20 minutes before the pickup time, Ashley texted saying she couldn't make it because she was having a spiritual crisis and needed to attend a healing circle. I had to watch my daughter's face crumble as I explained that mom wouldn't be coming. Emma just nodded and went to her room, and I heard her crying through the door. That's when I realized Ashley wasn't just abandoning me. She was abandoning our children, and they were paying the real price for her self-discovery journey. 8 months after she left, Ashley called me, sounding more excited than I'd heard her in years, talking fast about new beginnings and symbolic fresh starts. And then she told me she was pregnant. I didn't say anything for a long moment because I was doing the math in my head, realizing she'd gotten pregnant pretty quickly after moving in with Cole. When I finally asked if she was sure about this, she said, "This baby is a symbol of my rebirth, Marcus. This is me creating life on my own terms." I wanted to point out that she already created life on her own terms twice, and those kids were currently asking me every night when she'd come home. But I just congratulated her and hung up. The Desert Women Rising Collective threw her a celebration, posting pictures on social media of Ashley glowing in a flower crown, talking about divine feminine energy and the power of choosing yourself. And I'm looking at these photos thinking about how Emma cried herself, To sleep the night before because she thought mom didn't love her anymore? Would you keep supporting someone who celebrated their new life while ignoring the kids they left behind? Because her so-called support system sure did. They celebrated Ashley's pregnancy like it was some kind of feminist victory, completely ignoring the fact that she'd abandoned 2 children to create this symbol of rebirth. Cole started pulling away around her 7th month. You could see it in the photos Ashley posted. He was there, but not really there, standing slightly apart, checking his phone, looking like a guy who just realized that ideals about freedom and self-discovery don't pay for diapers. The reality of supporting a pregnant girlfriend while working as a personal trainer was probably hitting him hard. Ashley started posting less about liberation and more about the challenges of preparing for a baby, looking for recommendations for affordable cribs and asking if anyone knew of part-time, work-from-home jobs that were pregnancy-friendly. And the Desert Women Rising group went mysteriously quiet in the comments. Nobody was offering to help with baby supplies. Nobody was volunteering to throw a baby shower. They were all very supportive of the idea of her choices, but apparently not the reality of them. I should have felt vindicated, but I just felt tired watching this woman I'd spent 16 years with slowly realize that Instagram feminism doesn't keep the lights on. She reached out to her parents asking for financial help, and they told her they'd be happy to help their grandchildren, meaning Jake and Emma, but they weren't going to fund her new life with a guy barely older than their nephew, which Ashley took as a betrayal and posted a long thing about how society punishes women for being honest. The baby was born in month 9, a boy, and suddenly Ashley was dealing with the reality of a newborn in a cramped apartment with a partner who had checked out emotionally, and a support system that had evaporated the moment real help was needed. She started calling me more often, not to talk about our kids, but to vent about Cole, about how he wasn't stepping up, about how she felt alone, about how this wasn't what she thought it would be. And I'd listen because that's what I do. But I never offered solutions because these weren't my problems to solve anymore. My lawyer had been telling me for months that I should file for primary custody, that I had more than enough documentation showing I was the stable parent. But I kept hesitating because I didn't want to be the guy who weaponized the courts against his ex. I wanted Ashley to step up on her own. But she wasn't stepping up. She was barely keeping her head above water, missing more visits, showing up late when she did come, looking exhausted and distracted. And my kids were getting anxious every time they were supposed to see her because they never knew if she'd actually show. I remember Emma asking me one morning if she should even get excited about mom picking her up that afternoon. And something broke inside me hearing my 14-year-old daughter learning not to hope for her mother's presence. I finally filed for primary custody 14 months after she left. Not out of revenge, but out of necessity because my kids needed stability, and they weren't getting it from her. The court process was surprisingly straightforward. My lawyer presented the calendar of missed visits, the texts showing cancellations, the documentation of me handling every aspect of the kids' lives while Ashley was focused on her journey. Her lawyer didn't have much to counter with, except arguments about how she was going through a transitional period and deserved grace. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at Ashley, asked her directly how many of her scheduled visits she'd actually kept in the past 6 months. When she couldn't give a straight answer, I saw his expression change. He granted me primary physical custody, with Ashley getting visitation every other weekend, and she walked out of that courtroom looking like she'd been slapped. She didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after the hearing, and when she finally did, it wasn't to apologize or ask about the kids. It was to tell me, "You're punishing me for choosing myself, Marcus. You're using the system to hurt me." And I remember thinking that I didn't need to use anything to hurt her. She was doing that perfectly well on her own. Cole left 2 weeks after the custody hearing, just moved out while she was at work, left a note saying he couldn't do this anymore, couldn't be responsible for a kid that wasn't his, and a girlfriend who was drowning in regret disguised as empowerment. Ashley called me sobbing, actually sobbing for the first time since this whole thing started. She asked if she could come over, said she needed to talk, and I told her, "We can talk about the kids anytime, but if you need someone to process your relationship drama with, that's not my job anymore." The Desert Women. Rising Collective had completely disappeared by this point. No more meetings, no more supportive comments, just silence from the women who had cheered her on when she was blowing up her life, but had nothing to offer when she was living in the wreckage. Here's what I learned from watching this unfold. When people build their identity around rejecting responsibility, they attract others doing the same thing. And when reality hits, that whole support system collapses because it was never built on anything real to begin with. It was built on validating each other's avoidance. Ashley moved into a cheaper apartment, started working full-time again out of necessity, found childcare for her baby, and slowly started trying to rebuild some kind of relationship with Jake and Emma. She began showing up more consistently for her visits, actually asking them about school and their lives. But the damage was done. Emma was polite but distant. Jake was guarded, and they both knew on some level that I was the one who'd been there all along, the one who didn't choose himself over them. I started seeing someone new around this time, a woman I met when she brought her car in for AC repair at my buddy's shop. Rachel Davis, 35, a nurse practitioner at an urgent care clinic. Nothing serious at first, just coffee and conversations with someone who didn't come with years of baggage. It felt strange to laugh again, to have an adult conversation that wasn't about custody schedules or missed visits. Rachel understood what it meant to have real responsibilities, to be someone people depended on. She'd spent the pandemic working 12-hour shifts, dealing with life and death situations while people like Ashley were complaining about being oppressed by their suburban lives. I didn't tell Ashley about Rachel for months, and I definitely didn't introduce her to the kids until I was sure this was something real. I wanted to protect them from any more instability, any more adults who might disappear from their lives when things got complicated. Then Ashley found out I was seeing someone. I don't know how, maybe mutual friends or social media. That's when she reached out asking to meet, saying, "We need to talk, Marcus, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to hear me out." I looked at that text for a long time before responding, and I realized something important. She still didn't get it. Even after everything, she still thought this was about her. 6 months after Cole left, I met Ashley at a neutral coffee shop in Tempe. When she walked in looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sympathy, just this flat acknowledgement that we were strangers now. She ordered a tea she didn't drink and spent the first 5 minutes apologizing. Not for leaving, not for abandoning our kids, but for how things had turned out. Like our marriage ending was some kind of natural disaster nobody could have prevented, instead of a series of choices she made deliberately. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of self-reflection, and she wanted me to understand that she never meant to hurt anyone. She was just trying to be true to herself. And I sat there thinking about all the times Emma asked if mommy still loved her, while Ashley was being true to herself with a 28-year-old. She said Cole leaving had been a wake-up call, that she realized she'd been chasing an idea instead of dealing with reality. She wanted to do better, wanted to be better for our kids, wanted me to see that she was trying. I told her I could see she was trying, and that was good for the kids. That consistent visits and actual presence in their lives was what mattered. She looked at me like I'd missed the point of everything she just said. Then she got to the real reason she wanted to meet, asking if there was any chance, any possibility that we could try again. Not jump back into marriage, obviously, but maybe start over, take things slow, see if we could rebuild what we had. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to figure out if she was serious. When I realized she was, I asked her why she thought I would want that. Why she thought 16 years of marriage and 2 kids wasn't enough of a try. Why she thought I'd be interested in being her backup plan now that her adventure had failed. She got defensive immediately, saying it wasn't like that, saying she wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking if I still believed in our family. And I told her, "I believe in our kids, Ashley. I believe in being their father. But you and me, that ended when you chose yourself." She started crying then. Not the manipulative kind of crying, but the genuine kind that comes from finally understanding you can't undo what you've done. She said I was being heartless, that I was punishing her for being honest. About her needs, I leaned back and said I wasn't punishing her for anything. I was just not volunteering to be hurt again. There's a difference between punishment and boundaries. She brought up the kids, saying they deserve to have both parents together, that an intact family was better for them. And I reminded her that she was the one who decided an intact family wasn't enough, that she was the one who chose to blow everything up because some women on the internet told her she was oppressed. Ashley switched tactics then, trying a different approach, saying the courts were unfair to mothers, that the system was designed to punish women who didn't fit traditional roles, that I had used my privilege to take her children away. I let her finish and then very calmly laid out the facts. How she'd missed over 60% of her scheduled visits in the first 6 months. How she'd canceled on the kids' birthdays. How she'd been so focused on her rebirth that she forgot she already had 2 humans who needed her. And I asked her which part of that was the system being unfair versus her just not showing up. She didn't have an answer for that. She just sat there looking at me like I was supposed to absolve her, supposed to tell her it was okay and we all make mistakes and let's just move forward. But I was done absolving her. That was the last real conversation we had. Everything after that was logistics and schedules and information about the kids, polite and distant, like strangers coordinating shared responsibilities. The kids are doing well now. They have therapy, they have routines, they have a father who shows up, and a woman in their lives who's kind without trying to replace their mother. Rachel understands that building trust takes time, that you can't rush healing. Ashley still posts sometimes about her journey, about lessons learned, about the cost of authenticity. But she never quite admits what she actually did, never quite takes full responsibility, just hints at having paid a heavy price for being true to herself. Here's what I want you to take away from this story, because I've had 2 years to think about it. Real love isn't about grand gestures or finding yourself or choosing yourself first. It's about showing up on the boring days. It's about fixing the AC at midnight and helping with math homework and being there when your kid strikes out at baseball. It's about building something together instead of constantly looking for what you're missing. Ashley thought she was being brave by choosing herself, thought she was breaking free from oppression, but all she really did was trade one set of responsibilities for another, while losing the people who actually mattered. The irony is that she ended up exactly where she started, a working mom dealing with the daily grind of raising a kid. Except now, she's doing it alone, without the support system she destroyed. She said she chose herself, said it like it was this revolutionary act. Maybe in her mind it was, but I chose our kids. I chose to be the parent who stayed, who showed up, who did the unglamorous work of actually raising them. And looking at Jake laughing at dinner, at Emma doing her homework without anxiety, at the life we've built from the wreckage she left behind, I know which choice was worth defending. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do isn't walking away from your responsibilities. It's staying and honoring them. It's being the person your kids can count on when everything else falls apart. That's the lesson I hope my kids take from all of this. Not that their mother was wrong or bad, but that real strength comes from commitment, not from running away when things get hard. In the end, Ashley didn't lose herself. She lost us. And that's a distinction she'll spend the rest of her life learning to live with.